Good morning, all. Let's get started. Everyone has a seat. We'll come to order. And Carl Schultz just told me that there's a story behind this gavel, but he said he would let me know about it some other time. Anyway, welcome to our annual meeting. First off, I'm Bill Henske, your president. I'd like to introduce the board. To my left is Dennis Marquardt. To his left is Gary Henger. To his left is Fred Shumway. To my right, Judy Kramer, Sue Virlee, and George Wentz. Do we have everybody accounted for? Oh, and Larry is the cameraman. Sorry. You can't be up there and back here. Okay.
Never be president is I am left and right impaired, so I could not do what you just did.
How about talking about it? You're out of order. I'll talk to you later. As we convene the meeting, I first would like to thank Vicki and Doug Wilson. Are they here by chance? No. They have donated the coffee and the tea for this meeting. So those of you who know them, please continue to patronize them over at their store. That's Carlsville, isn't it? And those who don't know them, they live on the drive, and they own and run the Door County Coffee and Tea. Please visit them, a very nice store. Memory books. We still have an adequate supply over there. So please pick up your memory books if you haven't already done so. Do we have any new faces, any new members present today? If so, raise your hand. Stand up and identify yourself, please.
I'm Mary Collins, and my mother is Ronnie Seiler, so
Ronnie Seiler.
next thing you would recognize the Rabbi Seiler. And I've been coming to the drive since I was a baby, and now I live in our house. So we built it many years ago. Anyway, so it's nice to meet everybody or see good faces and know that I have neighbors. When we first built, there was nobody around at all.
Mary, what's your address?
4358.
4358.
When we built in late 60s, early 70s, we were a mile from the lodge, south of the lodge, and there were maybe 3 houses between us and the lodge. So it's a little different. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. I know since last year we've added 11 new members, and of course George will discuss the current membership that becomes effective actually today with the new fiscal year. I also would like to thank Barb Mallion. I don't see her here today, but the essence of any good organization is communication, and certainly Barb does so much communicating, at least among the ladies, and I know when I call upon her, she's very good about sending out notices and information. So thanks to Barb. Moving right along, you should have in front of you the minutes of the July 12 annual meeting, and I hope you've had a chance to look at those. And if you have, I would like to entertain a motion that they be approved.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Is there a second? All right. Is there a discussion? No? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I'd like to introduce George Wentz, our illustrious treasurer who does so many things, and besides the treasurer job, flies below the radar, as I call it. George?
Thank you. I'm finishing up my 4th year as your treasurer. So besides the cut and dry figures that I have here, I would like to also just make a few brief comments afterwards about my perspective on some of the things I've thought about looking back on the last 4 years. But for the first of all, I would just like to tell you that the treasurer's reports are over on that table. If you didn't get one, you can look at it later. And we basically run year to year with I wouldn't call it a budget. We don't have a formal budget, but our income is usually around $6,000 or $7,000, and we manage to spend that during the year on various things. And that's what happened during 2013, or the last fiscal year that ended on May 31st, 2013. But we also had an unusual expense during that period of time because we felt it was necessary, and when I say we, I'm talking about the board of directors, felt it was necessary to give back to the organization some recognition of its existence for 50 years. So Bill and Jane Henchy put together a program. Many of you probably were there last year to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And those memory books that Jane mentioned earlier are still here, and you should take yours if you don't have it. But the bottom line is, after much discussion, we decided that we would not charge the members anything for giving out the books or for putting together the program, which included invitation printing and mailing and a few other ancillary expenses. The only thing we asked the members to do at the time was to pay for their food at Glidden Lodge. So our cost to the organization ended up being $5,000 roughly. And we were able to pay for that out of some of our operating income, but we also have a reserve fund, and we decided this kind of a celebration was the kind of thing that we could tap into that reserve fund and use some of that money, so we did. Otherwise, during the year, the operating expenses actually came down a little bit. And we are finishing up with a bank balance as of May 31st in our checking account of $6,500. And we also have in our reserve fund a total of $10,600. So financially, the organization is in good shape. We should be able to operate very well in the coming year. With regard to the number of people who are in Glidden Drive Association now, I did look back, and 4 years ago at the beginning of the 2009 fiscal year, on June 1st, we had 220 members. And at that time, starting with that new fiscal year then, Rich Kinka was the president and served 2 terms. And his focus was to try to build the organization, get people who were not members to join. So we put forth a great effort to do that. And Bill continued that focus during the 2 years that he's been president. So starting out with 220 people back in June of 2009, today we have 262 people in our organization. We've added 40 new members, which is about 20%. And I think it's great to have that kind of support from the people who live on Glidden Drive. And by the way, I'm talking about new members, people who belong to the Glidden Drive Association. We have 315 eligible people. By eligible, I mean people who own property on Glidden Drive. So out of 315 potential members, we have 262, which is a very, very good percentage. It's good participation. And part of that, I think, it was reflected in the survey that was sent out last year, because what we got back was a fantastic response, and it showed the universal concerns and interests that everybody who lives on Glidden Drive has. We all share the same thing. So when I was thinking back on this, I thought, well, there are three things really that I see from my experience during the last 4 years as treasurer and from being on the board. The first thing is the dedication and the commitment and the concern of the people, not only who do come and sit on our board of directors, but also people who volunteer to do certain things for the benefit of everybody else. And we can go back just a couple of weeks ago to our garage sale, for example. That was something that was put together by some of the residents who are not necessarily on the board. We did, as the organization, pay for the advertising. There are people who put together our social events. And when we discuss these things in board meetings, which take place every 2 months approximately, we really look at the expenses. We look at what we can get for the money. We look to see how much we can save in putting on some kind of a dinner or a picnic or whatever. And we have a picnic coming up next month, and Sue Virlee went out and shopped around to see what she could get in the way of the best price. So what I'm saying is the expenses that we have to pay during the year are carefully monitored. That leads me to something else, and that is, going back to the survey for a minute, we had so many people who were interested in things like preserving Glidden Drive, keeping it look natural, any number of things like that. But we can't all do it with just 8 or 9 people. We need to have others join in, and I'm making, a personal appeal to people to think about becoming a board member. It's not a hard task. You don't need a lot of experience. You don't need any experience. In fact, the people I think in the last 4 years that I've seen contribute the most are the ones who have never had any experience. They come on and they have common sense, and they ask good questions, and they have good opinions, and they say, well, let's do this, or why are we doing this? And it makes for good discussion. So please think about joining the people here who are trying to do things for all the rest of us. It's not we and them, it's us. There's another reason for asking that you continue to support Glidden Drive Association, both as members and as people who are directing it, and that is that we have 262 property owners who have a strong voice in anything that we feel is not good for Glidden Drive, or if we want to promote something that we think is good for Glidden Drive. And that has to stay as strong as possible. So I appreciate the fact that so many people have joined, and I also appreciate the fact that the people who have paid their dues this year paid them practically all within 6 weeks. Notices went out on May 1st, and I would say probably 75% of everybody paid their dues by the end of May, and the rest of them paid by the middle of June, which is great. I appreciate it. And finally, I'll get off my soapbox here in a second. I mentioned earlier that we have a reserve of $10,600. Most of that money came from a bequest a couple of years ago from one of our deceased members, John Hockey. And I think that, like the strength that we can derive from the number of people who belong to the organization, we also need to have the financial resources in case there is some challenge to the way we are living on the drive or somebody wants to do something. And I don't want to start any rumors. I don't want to say anything that is really out of line. But if you've been reading The Advocate lately, you've heard about some tree cutting that's taking place in some of the northern parts of the county on roads that are very similar to ours. And they came in and cut down 100-year-old trees because they had to widen the road. I don't know that they needed to. I don't want to get into a discussion about whether it was right or wrong or whatever, but if somebody wanted to do that on Glidden Drive, what would you want to do in response? Wouldn't you like to stand up and say, no, we don't want that? So you need people to voice the opinion, and you need money to fight anything like that. So having said that, and I think I covered just about everything I thought of, are there any questions you'd like to ask about the current report or anything about Treasurer's job? If not, I thank you very much, and I appreciate all of your support.
George, thank you very much. I might add that my wife Jane and I have been associated with many organizations, associations over the years, and this truly is one of the most robust groups that we've seen. And we, I think, ask that you continue this. We like to see new faces, and we do see a few new faces, and we're reaching out to newer members to get active. It's your organization, it's not ours, it's your organization. So, having said that, we'll move on. Oh, did we have a motion to approve? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Tom, thank you. A second? John? Okay. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Passed. Thank you. I'd like to go on to the Glidden Drive Association newsletter. And I think the last two letters speak for themselves. And I personally, on behalf of the board, would like to extend kudos to Judy Kramer, her daughter Erin. Certainly, again, George Wentz's name comes up because this is one of the many things that he does that most of you do not recognize. But Judy, thank you for your efforts, and if you'd like to say anything at this point, you may. If not, Judy, as I've worked with her, she's a human dynamo. And if you want to, she's like a dog with a bone, but she doesn't bury the bone. She gets things done. And Judy, thank you, and again, on behalf of us, thanks to Erin, and who's going to deliver a new baby, and you and Ward will become grandparents again. Any day, right? Okay, we'll get into the county board presentations. Let me get reorganized here. Before I call upon Biz, I would like to share with you a conversation I had yesterday, with Sheriff Vogel about the speeding and noise and perhaps reckless driving on Glidden Drive. And of course, I think some of us, and maybe myself included, would be guilty of some of those infractions. But Sheriff Vogel said, after some discussion, that we are now in the queue to have one of these speedometers put up on the drive. And he said we should have it on the drive by the end of summer or by the first of fall, which will still capture some of the traffic during the tourist season. The speedometer, I've learned, is a very interesting computer. It not only measures the speed, but the number of cars. It gives you the average speed. it would give you the high speed recorded as well as the lowest speed. He recommended that we use this, and that would be, based on the results, an indication of how we want to go forward, which he recommended, and I'm sure Tom Gurman and Biz Virlee, with their experience, know this, starting at the local level with the Sevastopol Town Board and pleading our case there, and then going on up the chain of command. But first things first, you should experience the appearance of a speedometer sometime late summer or early fall. Right.
He promised that speedometer. I talked to him late summer last year, and he said as soon as you come up in the queue, so it's the same old story, but he must have a pretty long queue.
He was more definitive this time. He does have a long queue. He said it's much in demand, but he promised really by the end of summer or Labor Day, early fall. Oh, that might be a money-making.
Question.
Yes, sir.
You commented that you want to bring this up to the board and then take it up the line further. What is it you want to change?
Okay. There's been many questions raised about the speed limit, which is currently 30 miles per hour. And there's been an issue about that's too fast, we should lower it to 25. And if you drive around, there's really a lack of consistency, and I mentioned this to Sheriff Vogel. For example, if you go up K Point Drive to where it dead ends, I think that's 25 miles per hour. If you go down Lake Forest Parkway, that's 35 miles per hour. And of course, the infamous one where they like to ticket you is Egg Harbor Road as you go into Sturgeon Bay, which is 25 miles per hour. So we're just trying to get what's called a reasonable speed limit. It's a psychological thing, I think. Let's face it, if we lower the speed limit to 25, then people may go 30 and 35. If it's 30, they probably go 35 and 40. That's sort of the basic issue.
Do you actually think they can enforce it?
No, unless we had a whole army of people. I guess one way of enforcing it would be all of us who live on the drive to jot down the license numbers. And I know I personally, if I'm on my bicycle or even driving, I see a speeding car, I'll sort of go like this, and sometimes they give me the finger and sometimes they don't. But, you know, that's the risk that you run. So that's sort of the essence of it. Yes, sir.
Well, another thing, this is one of my primary concerns. Every time I go out on the drive, there's little incidents that may occur, you know. And even coming here today, going out of the driveway, somebody goes by and a bike, and, you know, even if you're alert and concerned, you know, you've got to be careful. But a lot of people are not, you know, they only go by there once in their lives, so on. So, you know, one other little way. See signs all the time along these lines. Some kind of warning signs, either for drivers, you know, watch out for children, or watch out for bicycles, or I don't know, maybe something for the bicycle, well, or just somewhere along the lines. A lot of people are not living there; they're just renting and visiting.
True.
You see people out there walking with baby buggies. You know, I'm sorry, I think they're kind of running with the baby buggy.
Well, and you still, to your point, you still see people who are walking or jogging in the wrong direction. They're not facing the traffic, you know, they're going with the traffic, and that can be hazardous.
Yeah, so, well, I guess a good part of the thing is we have so many curves, and that presents problems. You're, you know, going around, you don't see, something happens coming from the other direction.
Right,
or,
right.
You know, it may be too late, so I'm not suggesting we straighten it out or anything.
Right.
I think that's any
What-
kind of progress we can
Like the
make.
one article, if you read in the newsletter, you know, that Dave Curry put out years ago about straightening Glidden Drive. And for the record, let me have your name, please.
Larry Sipovic?
Oh, you're Larry, okay. Sue, and you're,
Russ Hopkins.
okay, Russ, thank you. Yes, sir.
In reference to what you mentioned as far as the police will do a follow-up. If you get the license plate number, it doesn't do any good. You have to actually identify the person who's been driving, and I think most of us would have a difficult time, you know, to do that. And I talked to that with Sheriff Vogel some years ago. And I think that's the most difficult thing to point out. If you see somebody and you can even identify them, but they said you have to really, in some shape or form legally, point out that this was the person who was driving that car at this time and such a day. And I think that would be extremely difficult for all of us to pursue. I think the best thing would be if the sheriff would occasionally put up a speed trap on some days where, you know, we get a lot of visitors and tourists coming through, because that's where the issue comes up. I mean, Irma walks quite a bit, and many times she don't know where to jump off to, because they just come tearing down the street in an unbelievable.
Someone told me, I think 2 days ago, was it Frank Keller? Where's Frank? That they were radaring on the drive. Did you tell me that? Somebody told me. I didn't see any evidence of that. Has anyone seen any evidence of a radar unit out there? No? Okay.
Post closes, because that is the time that they really sit down and drive. Even on, like, the other night, there was like this motorcycle. I thought sure he was going to hit a tree, honestly.
Oh, that's the one about
I don't know what.
early in the morning with a loud muffler. Yeah, you could hear that all. It just reverberated throughout. Yeah.
I was waiting
Crash.
for the crash.
Exactly.
Or meeting with the deer somewhere along the
Yes.
drive.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a screech and bang.
I
But,
guess it woke everybody up.
yeah, it was one of those racing bikes.
Well, I think it sounds like we need to take a page out of Mayberry and just do some citizens arrest.
You have her name, Sue. You have her name?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yes. Hi, Mary.
Yeah. What would happen if we put some signs all along the drive? You know, nice welcoming signs that just say, enjoy our drive and be mindful of all the sharp turns, and, you know, from the residents, you know, we live here too, and kind of just put it on the people that are driving through. And like when you reach the Shivering Sands turn, that's pretty sharp, you know, sharp turn ahead. Just things along the drive that will remind people.
Okay. Good idea. And
I was saying, we don't want, you know, just saying, welcome to use the drive, please drive carefully, and you know, there's a lot of children and walkers and whatever.
keep those thoughts, because I have a hunch someone will be calling upon you. Yes, sir.
How about speed bumps?
No. Well,
You don't have to talk to the sheriff.
really?
No, I mean,
They tried
you
those
don't have to
Whitefish
go
Bay.
through all this legal business.
Tried in Whitefish Bay, it didn't work. They took them out. Too many complaints.
Yeah, on Southgate Point Drive, they put it
How
in.
about tax strips?
Well, there you go, yeah. Well, another thought, yeah. Joanne?
A little history lesson, and Frank and some of, and Tom might remember this, but when we put up the fire caution signs on the road, then the county came and took them down. And they said, remember that, laddie? And they said, you're not allowed to put signs on county property without permission. So they took them down. And it was somebody, it was either Tom or Rich or Frank, went to Herlash, our fire chief, and Herlash had to go to the county to say, leave the signs up, we need them. So, a sign, generally speaking, if you think you're gonna do signs, you're gonna have to clear it with the county first. Yeah.
I might add that signs are a very debatable issue. We had a lot of debate when we put up fire signs. There's a certain percentage of people who want to keep the environment as natural as possible. So if you put up another sign, you might as well put up a billboard, you know, before you know it, you're going to litter the drive with signs. That's one perspective. The other one is the safety issue. So it's quite a balancing act as to whether you want signs or not.
Very interesting observation, no question about it. Any other comments? No? All right. Biz, may I call upon you to give us an update?
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, thank you very much. I'm your County Board Supervisor for District 15, which is our district, and since I arrived in Sevastopol, I guess I'm in my 4th term, so 8 years. I've been on the county board. 4 years prior to that, I was in the city of Sturgeon Bay. So before I start on an update of some of the things that are going on in the county, I'd like to share with you something that my wife Sharon and I are pretty excited about. It's kind of a Glidden Drive story. We have a beech tree in our backyard, and the tree died some years ago, and not the entire tree, but a lot of the tree was hollow. And a pileated woodpecker had made a hole in the tree, I would say probably about 25 or 30 feet up. And in a windstorm, the tree, 3 years ago, the tree broke off below where the hole was and fell to the ground, but it left about 18 or 20 feet of the trunk standing. So because a pileated woodpecker had been living in the tree, I thought, boy, it'd be kind of neat to put it back up. So I sawed it off level at about 18 feet, and then the portion that was on the ground where the pileated woodpecker burrowed his hole in, I cut that part out, put a little roof on it, and put it back up. And sure enough, that spring, pileated woodpecker moved in. So it worked fine. 2 years ago, it was kind of neat that a pair of wood ducks came along, and the female wood duck moved in, and we would see her periodically. She would fly into the hole, and we don't really know the outcome because we really didn't see anything after that other than seeing her numerous times. And then this past spring, a gray squirrel moved in, had a litter, 5 little ones, finally came out, little gray squirrels. And I thought that was kind of nice, but took over, and I didn't really suspect to see the wood ducks anymore. But lo and behold, after the gray squirrel moved out early this spring, I saw the female wood duck going back in that hole. And I thought, oh, this is pretty neat. So my wife had Googled wood ducks on the internet, and we found out a little bit of history on the internet, and also talking to Carl Schultz, and found out that when they lay their eggs, they lay 1 egg a day, and they often have about 15 eggs. They can have less, but they usually have around 15. So on June 27th, which is about 2.5 weeks ago, Sharon and I were all done showering, we were dressed, we were ready to exit the back of the house and go to the kitchen for breakfast, and I happened to look out at the hole, and there was the female wood duck. She was perched in the hole looking out, and she was looking all over, and then she disappeared down in the hole, and within a few seconds she reappeared, and all of a sudden, right next to her, I don't think there was a lot of room, out jumps a little duckling and jumps out to the ground. Right after that, the female left the hole, and she joined the little one on the ground. And a few seconds later, number 2 jumped out. A few seconds later, number 3 jumped out. And we're standing there watching this, amazed that we're witnessing the hatch. And we found out when the eggs hatch, They jump out the next day. She doesn't have to feed them where they get bigger. They're just have fuzz on them, but they jump out the next day. Well, all of a sudden, number 4 and number 5 appeared in the hole, and they jumped out together. A few seconds later, number 6 jumped out. Then number 7. Then number 8. Number 9 and 10 jumped together. Number 11 jumped. Number 12. And I'm telling Sharon, this is amazing. Pretty soon, number 13 jumped out. Then there was a little pause, and we thought, well, maybe that's it. All of a sudden, number 14 appeared, and he jumped out. And I told Sharon, I said, boy, that was really something. 14 little ones. And I would say about 3 minutes went by. It was quite a delay. Number 15 appeared in the hole, and that one jumped out. And that was really something we were very excited. That was really something to see. I don't think many people actually witness, but if you Google it on the internet, there is a video, and you can see it. They have the little ones jumping out on the internet, and you can actually see a video of it. And 2 years ago, I shared with my neighbor Carl Schultz a picture that I took from the bedroom window, of which I'm going to pass around and show you. But you got to remember, the tree is about, this is where I sawed it off, and so it's about 18 feet down to the ground. But this is the portion I put back up with a little roof on it, and you can see the mother is perched out of the hole. The drake is standing on top of the house. And so now 2 years in a row we've had the wood ducks. So I'll pass that around. You can look at it while I'm giving you an update. Well, I might add, when the little ducklings jump out, the mother has her task to march them to water. And Carl and I both feel that she probably went south right to the Shivering Sands Creek and then probably swam up the creek back to the Dunes Lake. And of course, they're very vulnerable when they're little ducklings, because if a fox happens to come along or a coyote, they're going to have lunch. But it said on the internet, one of their biggest predators, once they get to the water, is a turtle. And a large turtle will also eat the ducks. So although they often have 15 little ones, their survival rate is probably like the turkeys. They have a real lot of little ones too, but it's hardly 50% make it because they're so vulnerable when they can't fly and they have to be on the ground.
On the internet, you learn why 15 is so often the magic number?
It states that they often have about 15 and they can have less. But the other thing we found out, and Carl mentioned this to us too, it takes 15 days to lay 15 eggs because she lays 1 egg a day. It's very, very important, and she knows that when she lays that second egg, third egg, and so on, that she doesn't sit on them because they'll start to develop. So at the end of 15 days, when she decides that's it, then she sits on them because they all have to hatch at the same time. You can't have those first ones hatch and then later some more, because the day after they hatch is jump day. That's when they jump out. And it also said on the internet, they can jump as high as from 50 feet up. And I thought right away, oh, they're probably going to get hurt. Like Carl says, it's like they have springs in their legs. And when they go and they put their wings out, and they're just fuzzy, and they go down that 18 or 20 feet and land on the ground, and she's there to keep them in a group. And once they're all on the ground, they head for water.
Do you think your hotel have 15 rooms in it?
Well, I'm kind of anxious. We're anxious to see now what'll go live in the house next, because I'm sure there's a lot of eggshells in there. And Carl said when the squirrel was in there, they pull hair out of their tail and build a little nest for the little ones. And I'm sure the mother duck, she had a part of a nest in there to work with. So she's been in there 2 years in a row. So And they often go in a hollow tree where a pileated woodpecker made a hole. So I don't want to keep you people here for a long time. I do have a few things that I want to cover for update on the county board, but I wanted to share that because we were really excited about it. But in our minutes, you saw last year I told you about the ADRC, that was in the works, and it's a mandate by the state. All 72 counties had to comply with providing that service to the citizens, and it's Adult Disability Resource Center. And what they thought the proper place to put it was going to be in the senior center, and the senior center is aging and needs to be replaced eventually, but I and others on the county board kind of led the charge that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, that we can come up with enough room in the government center to have offices for ADRC, and maybe a couple years from now we can get the plans together of a new senior center, and then they would probably be together. So right now the ARDC is up and running. They have staff. They come to your house. They look at your situation, and the whole idea between ADRC, the idea of it is to keep us in our homes as long as we possibly can. Whether it means a wheelchair ramp, whether it means changing and maybe a shower you can walk into, or a chair lift on a stairway, anything that you have to do to stay in your own house, that's the goal of adult disability. And heaven forbid, I hope that we don't reach that point, but that service is available. The county is an arm of the state, and there's 20 departments, and they deliver all the services to Door County, whether you want to talk about law enforcement, you want to talk about snow plowing, all the different departments that are involved with government. So the senior center is probably a couple years away. The ADRC is up and running. We all probably remember about the Dunes Lake study. That went on for about 3 years. The whole thing there, to try to keep it short, was the vegetation back there exploded. They wanted to find out what was going on, why we were having that happening. So the Soil and Water Department had grant money, and GDA gave money a couple years in a row, $500 at a pop, to help the effort. And they did a 3-year study, which involved drilling wells, and it involved testing soil or water testing in different spots down by the Shivering Sands Bridge, going up Geisel Creek, all the way up into the Dunes Lake, and then going all the way up to Heberly Road and even further north on Geisel Creek. So after 3 years of study, they decided, the town of Sevastopol, I think Leo Zipper and the board decided that maybe we should have a committee and try to prioritize and decide what we should do to correct this problem, or at least help it. So I and others in the community, the school was involved, had representation there, the sanitary district, the farmers, there was quite a group of us that met several times, and we came up with a priority list of what should be done to help the problem. And after we made this list, they dissolved the group and turned it over to the Soil and Water. And as we speak, Soil and Water, they had a $500,000 grant and other monies, and they started with the highest priority with the farmers, namely the ones that were north of Heberly Road and that owned farms adjacent to Geisel Creek, where you were getting the runoff going into the creek of nutrient. So that involves buffers along the creek to kind of filter any runoff that's going to the creek. And there, of course, there's money available to the farmers. It didn't pay 100%, but it paid a big portion of it. And the Soil and Water Department is working with the farmers. And we all realize that we probably cannot correct this at 100% because this happened over the last 20 years, and it's going to take years to get less nutrient going into the lake and make it better. The nutrients that come down Geisel Creek go into the Dunes Lake, which goes into the Shivering Sands Creek, that goes underneath the bridge on Glidden Drive and goes into the lake. So I can tell you that study it was a good thing, and now they're taking measures to try to correct it. Mo-
On that issue, so that's phosphorus and nitrogen that they're looking at because of the growth and stops the flow and all that business. The concern is that getting into the groundwater, which the concern comes up is there any E. coli in that groundwater, which will affect people who have wells, which we all do, especially near shivering sand. So I think the next step should be look for E. coli and see if it is affecting the groundwater today or sometime in the future. I know that Schuster was very concerned about his own well being, infected with E. coli. So that probably would be more of an important issue.
Well, and we all have wells on Glidden Drive, and really you should test it once a year and send it in for E. coli and make sure that you're not contaminated, because that can be a very serious problem and get very sick and maybe even worse. So, yes, sir. Go ahead, Fred.
It was my understanding, listening to some of the discussion with the township here, that we had a contaminated well here at this township hall. Is everybody aware of that? Are they resolved that issue? Did they find what was the cause or who caused it?
As far as I know, they bleached it and they did it clean up and they're using it now?
Yeah, they did a process, I forget what it's called, but they bleached it, so to speak, and as far as I know, it's been okay since. Testing okay.
So, okay, moving on. Communications is so vital to Door County, well, to everyone. And the federal government came along a couple of years ago and kind of braced everyone in the nation and said that we're gonna mandate narrowbanding. In layman's term, what narrowbanding means is you have a transmitter, it puts out a signal to your fire, police, and rescue, and the strength of the signal can be at a point where it can affect other communities that are using that same frequency. So narrowbanding means you gotta cut the signal in half. You can only put out half the strength that you had been putting out. And they put this pressure on everyone in the nation, because as growth happens, people are, we had people that are in other states that use the same frequency that the sheriff uses, and you can get skipped, and they can be listening to us, which they don't care if there's an accident in Door County. So the federal government says there's got to be narrow banding and cut the signal down. So because that went into effect this year in 2013, the county has the task of building more towers and putting more transmitters up, because Door County has a lot of bluffs and what we call dead spots. When you drive into Sturgeon Bay from the south, you go down the hill and into the city. It's the same in Egg Harbor. You go down the hill and into that hollow. It's the same when you go to Fish Creek. Same when you go to Ephraim, Sister Bay. They're all in harbors. Back in the 1800s when things were happening, that was the safe harbor where the schooners could go. That's where the development happened. Well, when fire trucks, police cars, ambulances get down in those spots, they have it like a dead spot, and they can't hear on their radio. So to correct that, they put more towers up. Last year, we put one over on Chambers Island, and that was shooting the signal back in that cliff area along north of Egg Harbor, all the way up to Juddville, and that corrected that where they can hear. So currently, we have 2 towers going up in southern Door County. One's down in a gravel pit way in the south end of the county, and the other one's on Mill Road, maybe over toward the Maple Forestville area. The good news is the county owned those quarries where the highway department takes material out, and we can put our towers on our own property. We didn't have to buy any property. Towers are very, very expensive. So actually it was Chris Heck, the fire chief at Sister Bay, he wrote the grant, and maybe you'll see it in the newspaper coming soon, for $1.2 million to build these towers. And we've got word that we're successful in the grant, and the money is coming. The other good news is the very south tower, that one we are teaming up with Kewaunee County, because they have the same problem we have, and they want to put equipment on the tower, and their county board has agreed we'll pay for half of that tower. So between the grant that we have, between getting help from Kewaunee County, we're covered with both of these towers. We will have the funds available without raising any tax or doing anything, so that'll take care of that problem. The other thing going on in communications is we have an aging tower on the top of the Brussels Hill. The highest tower belongs to the state, and we do have some equipment on that tower. And the other tower, the shorter one, belongs to Door County. That's an aging tower. We think there's maybe a couple years left, but something will have to be done. Well, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we got very good negotiations going with Verizon, and Verizon has come to Door County and said we are very interested in building a tower on top of the Brussels Hill and wanting to know if we will give them space. So through negotiations, we told Verizon, yes, we'll give you space. We won't charge you anything. But we'd like to move all of our equipment off of our tower, put it on your tower at no expense, and then we can take our aging tower down and not have to build a tower, which is very, very expensive. You know, we knew that when the day comes to replace that tower on the Brussels Hill, it's going to cost a lot of money. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. Grant Thomas, Corp Counsel, says it looks good. He said there's a lot of understanding going back and forth and all the fine print, but so far it looks like we got a green light, and Verizon will probably, they want to do it so they have better coverage in southern Door County. And they're going to build it higher, and we will be able to put all of our equipment on it, which is going to be another very good move. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in wrapping up, probably a lot of people in here understand about budgeting, and the budgeting for 2014 in Door County it's already underway. We start real early in trying to figure out what each department in Door County is going to need for the budget for 2014. And I'll be the first to admit that there are departments, especially like the Highway Department, the Sheriff Department, even the Clerk of Courts Department, where it's kind of a little bit of a guessing game on your budget. You don't, because it all depends what happens. If we have a real severe winter and a lot of snow like we just experienced, well, obviously they use a lot more salt. There's a lot more plowing going on at night, and you can be short on your budget. It's the same with the Sheriff Department. If a lot of things happen, and this year now it won't affect last year's budget 12, but it could affect the 13 budget, like the Clerk of Court. When Nancy submits all of what she thinks could happen, well, we had a homicide. And of course, that young man's been in jail for a long time. He finally just went to court. Well, to make a long story short, we wound up with a hung jury, which means they couldn't come to agreement on whether he was innocent or guilty. So with a hung jury, you have to have another trial. Well, this jury came from another county. You know, they didn't want to use people picked from Door County because of all the news, and to give this lad a fair trial, they get people from another county, they bring them to Door County, they have to stay in a motel, they have to feed them, you know, and this went on for a week. It can blow the Clerk of Court's budget. You know, she tries to stay in her budget, but if things happen beyond their control, you can go over budget. And I know when you're running for office, people say, well, I'll demand that every department stays in their budget. Well, if you're in the real world and you have any experience, you know that might not be possible. So here comes the good news. The Finance Department closed the books at the end of June, and that was for 2012. Well, we all know in 2012, we had a pretty easy winter. Very little snow. Sheriff Department, things went pretty good. No huge, big profile cases. And I can say that of the 20-some departments that deliver the services to the taxpayers of Door County, it wound up a very good year in 2012. So if they have money left over in their budgets, they have to return it. And that money goes into the general fund. The books were closed a few weeks ago for 2012, and when you add up all the departments that returned money, it came to, I have it written on here, $2,412,464. So that goes into the general fund, which is good. Now, in 13, it may not turn out that good because of just what I explained to you. Profile case, the sheriff department, all the snow. If we have a real lot of snow in 2013, this year, in November and December, probably going to break the highway department's budget. You know, they're good so far, they're in budget, but it all depends what happens with the weather. So maybe if we have very little snow, maybe he'll be able, next year be able to return a little money. And if we don't, he'll come to the county board and say, I got to pay my bills, the budget's gone, I need some money, and that happens. And then of course, they get it. Door County has never ever been a small claims court. They pay their bills. So that's kind of a wrap up what's going, there's a lot of other things going on. I could go on for a long time, but you know, I've already taken up a real lot of your time, and I enjoy being on the board. It's a lot of fun, it's very interesting. And do we have time for a couple questions?
One, would you comment please on the resurfacing of Glidden Drive?
Well, you know, maybe a year or two ago, I told you they had us on they did from the hitching post down to Glidden, or down to Bark Road. And the idea was then they were going to do another third, and then another third, and another third, and over 3 years, they'd have the whole drive done. And now, because when the Highway Department Committee looks at other county trunk roads, they decided they were going to move Glidden back, and because there were other roads that really needed more attention than Glidden Drive, so they'll keep patching holes, filling cracks, and doing what they can. And now I'm hearing that before they get started on Glidden Drive again, it's probably going to be 2015. So we're going to be living with what we got, you know, for a while. But if there's holes and stuff, yeah, it should be brought to the attention. You know, I've already called John Clogie or Thad Ash, told them about, you know, a situation. They come right out and do the best they can to take care of it. So, yeah, they're not going to be paving soon. So, but that, you know, that's where that's at. I think, Tom.
No, actually, Bill read my mind. That was my question.
Oh, that was your question. Go ahead, Fred.
You were talking about the towers. Are those towers strictly owned by the government agencies, or are those the towers like Cellcom and Verizon you just mentioned?
No, the tower that we would be moving on the Brussels Hill, that's going to be a Verizon tower. But the two that we're building in southern Door County, the one up at Sunny Slope is one of our main towers. Another one on the hill at Sister Bay, we own those. County owns those and has to maintain them.
Then you have a special situation with Verizon that you be sharing the tower or you contributing to it. Now, is that a normal situation, or is that an exceptional type of a thing? Because I'm talking about a lot of the other towers we already have in existence, which are by the Cellcom companies.
Yep.
So, and they share between each other. So you do have a situation where you have it that a business type of cell company can share it with a government agency, and vice versa.
We have had radio stations and people that came to us and wanted to put equipment on our tower that we own. And there's restrictions on that when that tower is built by a county and it's for public safety, fire, police, and rescue. And Grant told the board, you don't want to start getting involved in having private go on there. Even though it would bring in some rent money, he said it's not really the purpose of that tower. So this will probably be the second time that we're going on a private tower. The one on Chambers Island, Cellcom owns. And they've been really cooperative with Door County. They let us put equipment on there to shoot a signal back toward the bluff, which has helped a lot. And Verizon, that deal there is, they want the height. We own the 40 acres on top of the hill. They would love to put a tower up there. And I think if it weren't for our tower and our equipment going on it, we might even turn them down and say, no, you know, that we don't want to do that. But this is a big opportunity for us. These towers are very expensive. And if they're going to put it up, they're going to maintain it. And in exchange for using our property, let us put equipment on it. It's a big plus. It's a real good situation. It's to help, you know, they don't have to. If you notice, let me just hit on one other little thing. Tax is really, the last few years has been at zero for Door County. Your taxes should be staying about the same or going down. And then if they went up a little, it might because the town board maybe, Sevastopol needed money, the school. But I can tell you, the county tax, we are at, except for new development, we are at zero and have been there for several years and will continue to be at zero. And we don't want to make drastic cuts where it's going to affect the service. We want to keep the services to the taxpayers high quality. And if you cut too much, well, then you're cutting services. Like if you cut the highway shop, well, they're not going to come out and they're not going to sand, salt, and plow as often. Maybe if you get 2-3 inches of snow, they're going to say drive on it. And we don't want that. We want to keep the services at high quality. So.
Roundabouts, when and where?
Well, I went to a highway safety meeting, and there's where they talk about it. And I think we're like maybe 2 years out yet. You know, they're putting them all over the place. A lot of people didn't want the lights taken down at Egg Harbor Road. Those lights were put up by the contractor that was rehabbing the Bayview Bridge. So when the rehab was done and they opened the bridge for 4th of July, that company, you know, they took the lights down. And people are like, oh, no, that was a good plus because of that intersection being hard, that one and the one at Culver's. And what they said at the meeting is eventually if they start with a roundabout at Michigan Street, when you go up to the intersection at Egg Harbor Road, which is a T intersection, and you want to go north, you won't be able to just turn left and cross the southbound traffic. You will have to turn right, go south, go around the roundabout, and then head north. Same thing at Culver's. They'll make you go up to the roundabout. It's all about safety, and that you don't pull out and get T-boned and get hurt. There's accidents in roundabouts, but very little injury because everybody's going slow. And that's what this whole thing is about about safety. So if you've experienced some of the roundabouts in Green Bay, and my wife is a little conscious about it, especially if you're on Mason Street and you're going out to Sam's Club, you go through 3 of them in a row. Well, you really got to watch your arrows and on the road and the overhead and be careful of what you're doing because you can't be crossing lanes in roundabouts. It's very, very dangerous. And I think people will get used to them. The biggest one that my wife and I saw when we went on our overseas trip this last one, we were in Paris. And we were down on the main drag in Paris where the arch is that was built, you know, back well, actually before the war. That's where Patton wound up when they liberated France. Well, right where the arch is in downtown Paris, there's like 15 main roads that come into that. I think there's like 7 or 8 lanes on that roundabout. How those people can negotiate one that's that complicated, you really got to know if you're getting into the roundabout and you're going to go on road number 10 or 12, you got to know what lane you're in and where to, you know, how you're going to get over there. It's amazing.
Round and around and around. The place that kept on going, keep on going, don't slow down.
How will T be impacted by the roundabout on Egg Harbor Road?
Well, I don't know if they'll wind up with some kind of a thing eventually there, but if there's one at Michigan Street, you're going to have to go south before you can go north.
Well, they made 4 years ago a plan on that thing that they would go on T as we be going up on 57 you would make a right turn and have an access road which would end up on Egg Harbor Road, and you would access Egg Harbor Road and get into the roundabout.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can go in the other direction. But we will not be able to cross anymore 57 on T.
Yeah. I think that, I know exactly what you're talking about, and they'd have to purchase the property there, and I think they kind of were getting away from that idea.
I think they did it already because, I don't know if you were, that they moved all the power lines away from, they were closer on 57, now they're far back.
Yep.
And I see some red stakes in there, which indicates to me that they're already working something for.
Yeah, American Transmission, you know, has that right away for the power going up to the substation at Dunn Road, and so that's all going to be ironed out in the future, what they're going to do there. So, and you know, down in Green Bay, they wanted to put roundabouts on Military, and there the city had a chance to voice their opinion, and they didn't do it. But on a state highway, it's different. If DOT says they're going to put a roundabout on the state highway, the county board and people are not going to have much to say about it on a state road. On the city streets and town roads, that's different. You know, then you do have a say, but not on the state. So, okay, there you have it.
Thank you.
Biz, thank you very much, as always. Let me move on to Jim Huta, who's our gas man, and he'll talk to you about feral gas. Mr. Huta, Commodore.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Bill. We're going to have a little game, and the answer is $1.25 a gallon. What's the question? You just want a cigar.
When's the contract in? The current dollar contract.
Oh. I think it's over. July 31. No. June 30th. June 30th it was over.
I called and wanted to have it top for the dollar again, and they said that they stopped that at the end of June.
Right. Yeah, it's $1.25 per gallon next year. But you have to be, of course, a member of the association. There are now 12 associations that deal with feral. Years ago, it was like 50,000 gallons that feral sold, and now I think it's about 300,000 gallons in all of these associations. And all you have to do to qualify, of course, is be a member of Glidden Drive Association. Everybody hear me okay? I can hear, I must ask at this point, because I can hear Gary, but would Paul come up here? Paul Casriel, he's going to be my ears because my hearing is deteriorating. Paul is an internationally known economist.
And has good hearing, right?
And has great hearing.
There was an old Saturday Night Live skit about the hearing impaired.
Yeah.
Please use the microphone, Paul. We can hear you. Please use the microphone. I got you. Well, forget it. Just go. Let's go on. Let's go on.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
You happy?
Wonderful. Had a good day sailing yesterday?
Oh, good.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to read verbatim what data is available for next year. This is propane pricing for 2013 and 2014. We are pleased to announce that Feral Gas remains as our preferred propane supplier for the 2014 heating season. This is a third year of a third-year contract. It's an agreement, of course. They have provided us a lower fixed rate cost for everyone without any required prepayment, hazardous material costs, or delivery fees. Our effort this year included the propane users of 8 different Door County associations. I got 12, but reaching as far north as Ellison Bay. There is no per gallon penalty for those who have leased tanks. The fixed pricing for all users is $1.25 per gallon, period. Although this represents an increase from the current year, we feel that based on other suppliers' proposals, we still have the lowest cost option of any provider. Propane, although very plentiful, is currently being exported to foreign countries, and the producers are able to extract higher prices, of course. Pushing our prices higher. Feedback on feral gas from our users continues to be very positive. I think they're very good. The highlights: no delivery fees again, no hazardous material fees, payment terms are net 30, credit card payments are good, and you can go on an internet payment routine where you can pay it on bill pay or easy pay or whatever they are. No individual gallon limits, and the contract prices are good until May 30th. This year, as Gary, it's June 30th, which is over. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
What's the approximate number or approximate percentage of residents participating in feral gas? Just ballpark.
That's a good question. Next question. I'm sorry, Bill.
I hope you go up on the reef the next time you're out on your boat.
What do you say?
Hope you're on the reef next time we're out.
Oh, thank you. I think probably about 75%. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of the people that are with feral gas from Glidden Drive. So, what was the other question, Jim?
I just want to reconfirm, no min-max on usage?
No min-max on usage. No minimum or maximum on usage.
That's correct. The fixed price for all users is $1.25 a gallon. There's no individual gallon limits. Correct.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
Why would anyone not want to be involved with this contract? Why would any member of Glidden Drive Association not want to purchase their propane from feral gas under this?
As an economist, that's a good question. Anybody got a good answer?
First of all.
You have to what?
No, you don't have to own your own tank.
No, you do not have to own your own
That
tank.
might be a not much take advantage of.
Feral, yes.
They have a good reason.
Let me stand by. Feral gas, should you be with another supplier, will take that tank out, put their tank in as long as it's reasonably close to where the old tank was at no charge. They will take the fuel from your old supplier and put it into your new tank, their tank, whether it be leased or owned by you, no charge. Are there any other questions? Laddie?
Yes, good reason not to use feral gas is I heat with fuel oil.
That's a good reason.
I know one other person at least that said, I like the supplier I'm with, I've been with them for 30 years, I'm not gonna change. No matter what the price is.
I'll talk to you after the meeting. We'll see if we can convert you to. It's like a consortium that just more bargaining power. I'm personally afraid if it gets too big, then they're going to get too much power, and then it's going to go up in price because there won't be any competition. But that's years away. Let's hope.
George has a question.
Oh, George.
I just want to know if you do get competitive bids from other suppliers, and what are they?
The question was, do we get competitive bids from other sources? And the answer is yes, but I don't recall what the prices are. I can see no reason why somebody would want to pay $2 a gallon when you can get it for $1.25. I mean, it's just a commodity. I do in the past, or I have in the past, had people complain to me that they were contacted by Feral Gas and they wanted to know where their name come from. Well, I wrote them back and said, I'm guilty, I'm sorry. 99% of the people are happy, but the 1% was not happy. So I apologized and we moved on. I don't know if they're a Feral Gas user or not now. So you can't keep everybody happy, but at $1.25, I think it's a good deal. Tom?
Jim, I wonder how many people here have holding tanks, and if there is a fairly decent number, would it make sense to try and consolidate on one pumper and get a better price? They kind of follow along the same lines here.
Okay, thanks.
Why don't we form the same sort of consortium for holding tank
Oh, holding
pumping?
tanks.
We'd have to have a different committee member to do that, because Jim can only handle, he's a gas man.
I think Jim can do it. All in favor of Jim?
Well, gas and sewage, in my case, might be connected. Hmm?
But I think,
I could handle that too.
I wondered about that as well.
Yes, I think it's possible. Would there be any particular interest in that?
Not for me. A lot of people have.
Oh, yes. Well, whether you have a holding or even if you have a conventional, it has to be pumped. I was under the radar for over 30 years, and all of a sudden my system failed, and I'm no longer under the radar. Now they got me. Tom?
Jim, the same idea was brought up a number of years ago about garbage collection. And nobody could agree on the fact that we were going to have one person pick up the garbage, or one company pick up the garbage.
Garbage, same thing for garbage collection.
People said, I'm happy with the guy that I got, why should I change? You're not, like you said before, you're not going to make everyone happy.
That's another possibility. I mean, there's all kinds of arrangements that could be made to do all kinds of services, house cleaning, whatever. That was, where's Joanne? Oh, okay. Are there any other questions or comments or anything? I know we all want to get out and play golf and horseshoes and all other things.
I want to thank you for all the work that you put into this. Very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. I really don't do a lot. There are lead people, but yeah, it's kind of fun to chat with you folks. First year I did it, there was 220 some emails. So I learned how to really do emails fast. No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, thank you, and may your tank always be full of gas. Moving right along to memorials, we really have no new memorials since the last two newsletters, unless we're missing. I checked with George just now, unless any of you know of any that we should be aware of. If not, I'd like to go on to items 8 and 9. I like to take those in conjunction Oh, thank you, Sue. Yes, I would like to comment on social events, specifically the picnic, which is coming up on August 17. And thanks to Sue Virlee and Katie Castriel, we're in good hands. And Sue or Katie, would you like to comment on just where we are?
Right, the annual picnic will be August 17th, right out here at the town park. And we encourage you to bring your guests, your family, your kids, your grandkids, whoever might be in town. It's going to be catered by Beebles Catering out of Green Bay. And we have a wonderful selection of foods. It's going to be cooked on site, so it's not going to be delivered in tins already ready to go. So it'll be cooked on site, grilled on site. We're going to have grilled chicken, bratwurst, hamburgers, side dishes, beverages, desserts. So I think it'll be a nice event. And the sooner you get your reservation in, the better it'll be, because we do have a kind of a per-person commitment to the company. So it's August 17th from 12 to 3. So pray for good weather. Oh, and maybe you saw that at the bottom of your newsletter, this wonderful newsletter, the form to return, and I would imagine the check will go to the P.O. Box number here, but you could also email Katie or me with how many people you're thinking of bringing so we can get an idea of numbers. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue, and also Katie. All right, moving right along to essentially the last two items of substance on proposed bylaws change and the direction of the director's election. The board has studied the issue of trying to fill vacancies for many, many hours during the last year. And even as we speak now, we have a couple of vacancies. And what we are proposing for your consideration is a change in the bylaws which we feel will help sustain, enhance the effectiveness of the Glidden Drive Association. Your board is in complete agreement with these changes, and I guess it sort of ties into the fact that all organizations change over a period of time, sometimes imperceptibly and sometimes otherwise, and these changes are brought about because of external forces, internal forces, but nevertheless, organizations do change, and I feel, the board feels that when organizations do change, that perhaps the composition of the officers and directors should also be modified to stay in step with these changes. Your input in recent months and years has been impressive, i.e. the survey that we sent out, George commented on. The response was overwhelming for any kind of a survey. We now reach out to you once again for your help in trying to maintain the viability, increase the viability of the Glidden Drive Association by changing the bylaws. And essentially, there are two significant changes, and I do have some copies of the current language versus proposed language, which I'll distribute for your review. But there are two significant changes. One is that the membership, you the membership, will elect the board of directors. Once you elect the board of directors, then the new board of directors will elect or choose the officers of the organization. This change, we feel, is quite normal. If you look at other organizations, associations, and so forth, the directors, once they are elected, will elect the officers. The officers will continue to serve for a year, as they do now. The directors will continue to serve 3-year terms, as they do now. The second change, and this is again after much deliberation by the board, and it's in complete agreement unanimously with the board, is to reduce the number of directors and officers from 10 down to 9. We looked at reducing it to fewer numbers, but we felt that 9 made sense. It's also an odd number, and even though we haven't really had the need to invoke tie-breaking provisions or whatever, we felt that an odd number would be better than an even number. So these are the 2 changes that we would like for you to consider seriously and to obviously vote upon once we have a motion to do so. Are there any questions or comments at this point? And would some of you like to see the present bylaw language versus what we're proposing? As you're looking at the proposal, I put up here the current structure. President, we have a vacancy for a VP as we speak, secretary, treasurer, and we have a vacancy for someone to serve, actually expiring right now, 2013. That's the way it looks as we speak. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I understand, and I favor the idea of having the members electing the directors. So it's the first proposal, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but why does the board believe they should decrease the number of board members rather than, maintaining, having somewhat larger? Because offhand, I would think you might want broader participation, except it can also be too large.
Well, certainly, to answer your question, we always have broad participation, it seems, whether it be from an official elected director or officer. But B, I think the simple reason is that we have a devil of a time getting enough people to fill the vacancies. This past year and a half or so, and George checked me on this, it's probably been one of the worst in terms of filling vacancies. Sadly, we had one person resign for personal reasons, well, actually 2 people resigned for personal reasons. And we did not fill those positions. We couldn't get anybody. That's the easy and the simple answer. And I think it's been proven that with the present composition, the board has been highly functional, very effective. And I personally, although I'm going off the board, I believe in fewer numbers instead of larger numbers for obvious reasons. I think it's more results oriented.
Yeah, I understand the answer.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think the proposal is very common. As just an example, we have residents up in Florida, Naples, and we're in a gated community which are over 20 associations. And each one of the associations has the same concept, that the board members get elected and they pick then between themselves after the election. They come to sit down and then they pick who's going to be the president and treasurer, et cetera, et cetera. And we have presently 7 members and we have about 120 owners in our association, and there's in different sizes. And it works out quite well because it makes it a lot easier, because a lot of people, when they say, well, we vote for the president, and I was president of an association, it takes forever. Nobody wants to take the president's job. And it was like you have a lifetime job association with it. So I think that concept, what you suggest, I think is a favorable one.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? If you were to approve, and keeping in mind I'm looking at items 8 and 9, then it would look this way, that the officers would be determined by the new board, and we do have 3 nominees. We have John Campbell, who is here. John, stand up, please. John is a nominee for the board. We have John Swanson, who is a nominee for the board, and John and his wife are happily in Montana babysitting grandkids as we speak, could not be here. And then we have Fred Shumway, who has graciously raised his hand to stay on for 3 more years. Fred was scheduled to go off as we speak now, 2013. So if you vote on this proposal, as we have stated it, we would still have 1 vacancy on the board to serve a 2-year term until 2015. Otherwise, the board would be intact. Any questions on that? And if there's not, I would like to entertain a motion that the changes in the bylaws as we have proposed here be adopted.
I so move. I move.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, you're a second. All those in favor, say aye. 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 Oppose? Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, moving on to the election. First of all, I'd like to say that it's been a distinct pleasure working with this board. It's amazing when you get some differences of opinions, but how they coalesce, how you can bring everyone together and come to meaningful conclusions. We're a very results-oriented board. It's been a pleasure to work with everybody. I know the board will be in good hands as we go forward. I also would like to give special recognition on behalf of the board to George Wentz, because as I've said many times officially and unofficially, George does so much. You don't need a job description when you deal with George. The treasurer's job description, he's shattered that many times over, and he does so much work, what I call below the waterline or off the radar scope. And George, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've known George ever since the days of the condo, but I didn't know that he has so many arrows in his quiver, and he certainly does. George, it's a pleasure. All right, the nominating committee has nominated John Swanson, John Campbell, and Fred Shumway to serve on the board of directors. We will also entertain nominations from the floor. Are there any?
No.
Frank Keller? From, you're never humble. Frank Keller from Big Flats. Okay. But do I hear a motion that the nominations, as indicated here, be approved? Thank you, Tom. Is there a second? Who said that? Ward? Hi, Ward. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
You just approved the point of order, Chairman. You just approved, you didn't elect them.
Well, we'll put an asterisk in there. What do you want to do? Well, all right. Is there a motion to elect the nominees? Thanks, Jerry. A second on that? Second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you once again. All right. Pardon me? No.
Okay, my name is Dennis Marquardt, as you all know, and I've been on the board for about a year now, and I've gotten the opportunity to work with Bill. And as you know, Bill is going to be stepping down off the board as president. And, you know, I've learned a lot from Bill over the last year. He has our best interest at mind all the time. He's a great leader and a great mentor to me. And I just want to make it known that you are a great guy, and I really appreciate you. And on behalf of the Glidden Drive and the Glidden Drive Association Board, we'd like to present you with this little gift. It's right there in front of me.
Can I touch it?
Yeah, you can touch it. You can touch it. And we all really we appreciate everything you've done for us. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to work with you. Thank you. Wow, beautiful. My wife will be happy. Except I'm going down there in the dead of winter instead of at the bar and do my sociological surveys. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, the board has agreed to recognize George, but we're going to do it at the adjournment of the meeting to give him a well-deserved little gift. But George, I know you'll like it because you're a man of many talents, but this time I went to the right source, namely your wife. So, thank you. All right, moving right along, any open discussion? This is your time to say something. Yes, sir. And identify yourself again for our secretary.
Larry Sipovic, 4106.
Okay.
I'd like to request or have open for consideration. I know that some of the access roads, I have a sign that indicates the width so that people that are from the roadside or our visitors have at least, we give them some idea as to what space is appropriate for them to use. I'd like to request that be put on some of the other access lanes, Oak Lane specifically, which is I border on Oak Lane. We've been having more incidents of people not, maybe I'm going to make the positive assumption that people just don't understand where the, I'll call it public access is, and wind up on the actual property of even not people, the people necessarily adjacent to the lane, but spreading out multiple houses down.
Are you talking about vehicles primarily, or?
No, people parking in front of your house or even your neighbor's house. In other words, they're going way past where the public access is designed to be.
By parking, he means bringing their beach stuff down, not their car, right, Larry?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, people have been pretty good, they pull in, at least I can only speak for Oak Lane. When they pull in, they're pretty good about not blocking so we can still get in and out and things like that. It's more, they go down, they bring their beach blanket and their chairs and their kids and the floating rafts and everything else, and it winds up on private property rather than the access area.
Very good point. Sue made a note of that, and then we'll jump on that, of course. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments?
Seated back there, but unfortunately had to leave. Just asked a question about the maintenance of the Glidden Drive lanes. So.
The maintenance of the lane.
Which you felt like a lot of, they were overgrown and you really couldn't even get down there. So I'm just doing that for her.
I would probably have people with more experience. I do know, and help me on this, maybe Tom or Biz, that some of these access lanes are owned by, what, the county? Laddie, you're talking about the private ones that we own. Well, there's no, at least in my opinion, okay, good, Gary.
I know that in the past, some of the men of Glidden Drive have gotten together and assumed the responsibility to keep a lane clear. What I've done, because I live across from Elm Tree, I take the responsibility to try and keep Elm Tree open in my own self-interest, because I have grandchildren that want to go down to the lakefront. So I weed whack it, and that's what we're talking. We're talking weed whack. If a tree falls across a lane and you live next to it, then, you can take the initiative to go clear the tree, get it out of the way. But that's the only way we've done it in the past that I know.
Is there a liability involved since the county, let's say you do cut a tree and then something happens?
No, I'm not talking about cutting a tree. I'm talking about a tree that's fallen down and then removing that so that...
Still in the process, people get hurt. I'm just thinking that's something we should think about,
county's not involved in our private property.
Yeah, not on our access lines. The little access lines. There are only two county,
There are about five public ones in the southern third of the drive, and we have, I believe, 11. They're owned by the association of different widths.
The list is in the news.
yeah, the newsletter, I just had a comment on it.
If someone will volunteer to lend me a working gas string trimmer that's beefy, I'll trim them, but I don't have a beefy enough gas one that works. And if you need a string trimmer, a regular lawnmower doesn't work well. It's too rocky sometimes. Anybody have one?
No. Who in legal terms?
I use a big extension cord.
I do too, but
Who in legal terms really is responsible or who owns it?
we do.
The Glidden Drive Association?
Yeah, the association, right.
Because I never knew really who owned it. Members own it. Members own it, yeah.
I think we should make that an agenda item for our next meeting.
Okay.
Along with the other holding tanks and septic systems.
Right. Okay.
Could the agendas be, are they now, agendas, could they be emailed to the association so that if I, as a member, can see something of interest and maybe decide to show up at a meeting? Because now I don't know what the agendas are, or actually when the meetings are.
I don't know I don't think every member has an email address.
Well, it's a start.
But, we use Barb Mellon. Her group email address would be the way we would do it.
Or we could do the website if it's, once we get it up and running, but that's a good idea. And I think we tried to put the dates in the newsletter for the next meeting, but not the agenda. But we'll work on that, okay. One last thing, I would like to give thanks to Laddie Chapman for all of his contribution, and certainly today, as he has in many of these events, records and takes care of the microphone, et cetera. So, Laddie, thank you for your efforts. And having heard no more comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Gary, okay. Is there a second? Second. Back there, John Campbell. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No? Meeting adjourned.